Going to Anime NYC this year was like setting foot on another planet. I'd never been to a con before. I didn't know what to expect, but the sheer insanity was beyond anything I could have anticipated. Promos, panels, and photo shoots in every corner of the Javits Center, packed crowds and cosplay everywhere in between, all through the endless rows of Artist Alley and, unfortunately, lines that stretched several blocks outdoors. And all of it, all of what the con had to offer, was amplified by tens of thousands of people eager to reclaim the coveted convention experience which had been locked away for so long. I'm so glad I went. With wonderful friends by my side, I snagged some sick souvenirs, made wonderful memories, and managed to retain most of them as we got freaking plastered afterwards in Midtown Manhattan. It was a blast. And hey, would you look at that? We all had so much fun, it even made headlines. Anyway. It was really cool to be a part of that excitement. To exist in a space where the biggest nerds get to be themselves, wholly open and honest about the niche stuff that they love, and to share that love with the community. It's motivated me to get back on the video grind, to keep learning and creating things that I'm passionate about, and maybe even putting some extra stuff up on my Patreon? Yeah? Huh? More on that at the end of the video. Today, I thought I'd share some highlights from one particular panel. One of many opportunities at Anime NYC to listen to industry professionals talk about the biz. It was called Localize This: Secrets of Localization Revealed, and I found it highly educational. To kick things off, award-winning translator Zach Davison took a few minutes to introduce his profession and to clear up some misconceptions. First and foremost, Davison considers translation and localization to be the exact same thing. There's no use in making a distinction, or the way he puts it,
it's just a matter of a sliding scale. Like imagine a little knob, like how much do you turn it up and how much do you turn it down? But it is impossible to do any translation without localization. It's just impossible.
To a certain segment of anime fans, them's fightin' words. After all, localization evokes images of, let's say, less than faithful English adaptations.
How'd you guys meet then?
We're cousins. We grew up together.
Huh? Whoa!
But our good friend Mr. Davison insisted that while bad localizations do exist, good localization can really transform a project for the better. As he argued with a couple examples, the most iconic catchphrases as we know them are rarely penned by the original authors, and yet are essential in helping fans connect with and get excited about a foreign property. To explore things further, Davison was joined by 4 highly esteemed guests: Anime News Network's executive editor Lindsay Loveridge, and veteran localizers Carl Horn, Mari Morimoto, and Erica Friedman, each of whom has worked on some venerated all-time classic manga. So according to these seasoned professionals, what makes a good localization? What makes the English language version of a Japanese work successful? That's obviously a very big question, one with a billion-dollar industry riding on top of it. But I think Erica Friedman gave us the most succinct answer.
I think that good localization is a seamless reading experience where you pick up a manga and you read it just the way a Japanese person would pick up a manga and read it. However that works for you. Every single person here in cosplay and wearing merchandise, all of you have had some kind of seamless reading experience. You've felt those things, you've cared about those characters, you know what worlds you're living in, and that to me makes a good localization.
Every panelist gave some response to that effect, that good localization would prioritize immersion and somehow replicate the seamless experience of a Japanese consumer. But the next question, of course, is how? And that's where it gets interesting. Translation is not an exact science, with many creative decisions and weighing of priorities involved. Davison went so far to say that there was no such thing as general agreement among translators. So right from the start, we were promised a lot of bickering. And they kinda delivered. But mostly just playing it up for laughs, like here when they were discussing honorifics.
I'll go ahead and lead this off. Honorifics have no business being in a manga.
There's nothing wrong with the honorifics. Honorifics have a place, and they don't have to be in the kind of stuff for little boys that you translate. But for adults, there are actual meaning to the honorifics, and it does make a difference if somebody is, if you call me.
Yeah, I agree actually with what they said. I just wanted to be controversial. And I know.
And you could continue to hear that kind of tongue-in-cheek tension in the context of adding translator notes.
That goes back to the point that people can sometimes get angry with me, is that I feel like manga is there, it is not there to educate you about Japanese culture. That is not its point. If you get that out of it, it's fine, no, it's not. But if you get that out of that, it's fine. No, it's not.
Like my brother.
But if you listen to the whole panel, which by the way you can totally do, I have a link in the description, you'll notice that these exchanges never get very technical. These weren't some petty arguments about word choice and grammar, but philosophical ones. Harkening back to the sliding scale, for instance, how much should we change from the original text so that its meaning remains unchanged? Carl Horn had this to say about sticking too close to the original Japanese.
It's a weird thing because everyone has individual issues of taste. There are people who actually like a translation that sounds awkward.
Yeah, I know. I had experience with an editor who wanted me to make my translation more awkward because he said that the readers would then find it more authentic.
However, I have this belief that when the average Japanese person opens up the original manga, the original tankobon, and when they read it, they don't say, boy, this is Japanese. This is authentically Japanese. Wasn't that so authentically Japanese the last page? They're not thinking that at all because they are Japanese. So in theory, there's an argument to be made that it shouldn't feel Japanese at all.
To that end, Zach Davison was adamant about the need to take artistic liberties. And so he and Erica discussed how to translate the emotional substance of the original work.
The words were not necessarily the point. The words are there to evoke an emotional response from the reader. And if I need to shift those words in English because the words in Japanese weren't going to cut it, then I don't mind shifting the words entirely. Like humor is one of the most difficult things ever to translate because humor is almost entirely culturally and linguistically bound, right?
So it's cool to change the words to fit it, but try to evoke the pacing or the tone,
yes, absolutely,
or the sense, because if you're just going and translating it, so try to recreate that feel as well.
And then, pulling in a slightly different direction, Mari Morimoto pointed out that nowadays, localizations can still be effective without changing too much, without having to coddle Western audiences.
I think it's also gotten easier recently because, and not just you manga fans or anime fans, but people in general in the United States are more familiar with certain Japanese concepts. Mm-hmm. So I feel more annoyed when I've been asked to really dumb down or Americanize something in the last couple of years, because I'm like, there are U.S. baseball fans who follow Japanese baseball because we have so many good Japanese baseball players coming over to the States, mm-hmm. things like that.
After hearing all of these competing ideas, after listening to this 45-minute conversation that covered everything from manga lettering to Twitter backlash to not-so-subtle digs at platforms like Crunchyroll for underpaying translators, it was hard to say if I came away with a clearer picture of localization. It was a mess of differing opinions and anecdotes. We could never get too in-depth into any one topic. But I did come away feeling reassured. When Zach Davison mentioned that they could talk for days and days about this stuff, I didn't doubt it. Everyone up there was clearly very passionate about what they do. They've put in so much thought into doing right by the audience and the original creators, and I'm glad that such talented and mindful people are a part of this industry. I think my favorite part of the panel was this long tangent where basically it was about our limited understanding of foreign culture through media, be it social media, anime, manga, film, whatever. And they talked a good bit about reverse localization, referring to American media being localized in other countries. There were some really great perspectives from all the panelists, but I was really struck by Carl Horn's take in particular. So I'll share one last clip with you guys. Here's Carl describing something that really changed his perspective on localization.
With Squid Game, we Americans are starting to get the taste of what people around the world deal with anyway. Hiroki Yamaga, who directed my favorite anime, Royal Space Force, one time I was trying to get him to say that the dub of Royal Space Force was problematic, as people did not say back in 1995. But he was even-minded about it, because as someone who is not American, you see, people around the world are very used to seeing dubbed American television, subtitled American television. He says that my entire life I've been watching foreign stuff, and it was obvious to me many times this wasn't what they were really saying. And I just learned to enjoy it anyway. Yes, they probably changed things in the dub of my film. I don't think it can be helped. You know, sometimes things can be changed. So he helped me to look at things a little bit more philosophically. And I think it was very important that the creator of the film, where I had passionate feelings about, where I was feeling angry about it, was telling me this. But we always have to remember, we have to be careful about our perspective. We localize things and we don't even realize we're doing it. And part of the way we localize things is bring a perspective to it which is inappropriate. We don't have appropriate humility. We don't remember to see these things as the product of a different culture.
I think hearing personal takes like that has helped to shift my perspective too. I don't know if the same goes for you after just hearing these out-of-context clips, but again, there's a full audio recording down below along with links to all the panelists' socials and other sites, so if you're interested, I highly recommend you check them out. Up until this point, the only time I've talked about localization on YouTube is an unscripted shitpost I made 4 years ago. Just kinda blabbering nonsense and shitting on every anime dub for 9 minutes straight. It's comic genius, basically, ahead of its time. But in case you haven't realized, I actually have a lot of respect for translators, professional or otherwise. And besides attending this panel at Anime NYC, this past year or so I've taken more time to learn about what they do. Listening to interviews, following creators like Sarah Moon and Cartoon Cypher, trying to better understand the process behind localization, and anime dubs in particular.
I think my English is really improving.
But they're speaking Japanese.
Dubs are so interesting, because like Carl Horn was saying, everyone brings biases to the table. We as consumers do, and so do localization teams. And with dubs, so many more people join that team. On top of the translation, you have a script adapter, ADR director, all the voice actors. So many more people have creative input. And that means more people stand between you, the viewer, and the original work. Quality aside, that's why dubs can seem inauthentic, right? An entirely new creative team steps in and changes things up, like a long, multilingual game of telephone. But I guess I'm starting to think of it a little differently. Translation is so much more than conveying the literal information of a text. Good localization accounts for pacing and rhythm, the emotions and intent of imagined characters, as well as the very real response of an entirely new audience. It's an art in itself. It has to be. And so, having more creative input at every stage of the process can be a good thing. Whether dubbed or subbed, localizers aren't standing between you and the original work, but ideally guiding you closer to it, recreating the experience as if it was always meant for you, to let borders melt away and experience the beauty of anime as it was always intended.
I'm actually an angel.
What's this about anal?
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Well, I'm sure I'll talk more about dubs on this channel in the future because I can be very picky and love to complain, but also I just find this stuff really interesting. Because it's clear that bringing culturally, linguistically bound stories like this to a worldwide audience, subbed or dubbed, cannot be easy. And we have many people to thank for making it possible. And hey, you know what else isn't easy? Making YouTube videos. That's right. It's Patreon pitch time. We're done talking about the other thing. And now, no, don't close the video. Okay, if you want to support this channel, I finally set things up at patreon.com/hollowbruce, where you can give me money in exchange for goods and services. For as low as $1 a month, I'll feature your name at the end of videos like this one. And for more dollars, you can also gain access to exclusive artwork, polls, and other miscellaneous content. Possibly early access to videos or something like that. I don't know. We'll sort it out. We'll figure that out. And wow, is that a commission tier where I'll draw you a picture of a thing you like? That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Huh? Okay. To be perfectly candid, the support I already get from you guys is more than enough. I am thankful for the views, the nice comments, and I feel kind of guilty asking for anything else, especially since my upload schedule is not very regular. It's not going to get any better with my current day job, but even so, I have so many ideas for the channel. It might take a while, but I want to keep at it. I want to keep putting videos out there. And I'm hoping Patreon can be another platform to interact with you guys, provide updates, and other small bonuses to tide you all over. So for anyone who has the means and the patience and wants to give a little more, it's there. You know, it's there. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I love you, and I'll see you next time.